At Christmas Eve dinner, I expected the usual, laughing cousins, the smell of rosemary turkey, Grandpa Ron pretending he didn't burn the rolls again. But instead, the night cracked open my entire world. Because right as we were raising our glasses for the annual toast, Grandpa Ron turned to me with that proud, grandfatherly smile and said, loud enough for the whole table to hear, "So, Nora, how's the $480,000 house I bought you?" The fork slipped out of my hand. The entire table went silent, and my heart dropped so hard I thought everyone could hear it. A $480,000 what? I stared at him, waiting for the punchline, but he just kept smiling, as if I'd been living in that house for months. My parents, Harold and Marlene, stiffened instantly. My sister, Lacey, nearly choked on her wine. And every pair of eyes in that dining room landed on me, waiting for some happy, grateful response. But I had never received a house. Not a key. Not a letter. Not even a hint. My voice came out thin and shaky. "Grandpa, what house?" My mother's fork clicked loudly against her plate. "Nora, not now," she hissed under her breath. I'm sorry," I stammered, cheeks burning. "But I don't know anything about a house." Lacey suddenly let out this awkward laugh, the kind people use when they're absolutely panicking. "Oh, Grandpa, you must be mixing things up. Nora's apartment." But Grandpa cut her off. "No, sweetheart. The house. The one I bought for Nora in June. The one your parents helped me finalize." Another heavy silence. My parents' faces turned a strange shade, something between guilt and anger. My father muttered, "Ron, let's discuss this later." But Grandpa was already frowning, confused. I felt everyone watching me as if I'd committed some crime. As if I had been ungrateful. As if I was hiding something. I swallowed the humiliation like broken glass. "I'm sorry," I whispered. But I never got anything. Instead of helping, instead of explaining, my mother reached across the table and squeezed my wrist hard enough to send a warning. "Drop it," she mouthed. "Drop it. Drop a $480,000 house I never received?" Lacey jumped in again, her voice overly cheerful, desperate. "So, who wants pie? Pie? Seriously?" The conversation shifted painfully, clumsily, everyone pretending nothing happened while I sat there drowning in confusion and betrayal. My parents refused to meet my eyes. Lacey kept tapping her foot anxiously, like she expected the floor to collapse beneath her. By the time dessert plates were cleared, I felt smaller than I had in years. Invisible. Lied to. Mocked in front of the entire family. And the worst part? I could see it in Lacey's face, in my parents' silence, in the way they kept blocking Grandpa from talking to me. They were hiding something. Something big. Stick with me while I share my story, and if it touches you, don't forget to support our channel by hitting that subscribe button, dropping a like, and sharing it with the people you care about. Because this was only the beginning of a betrayal I never saw coming. I couldn't get Grandpa Ron's words out of my head. All night, I tossed and turned, replaying the moment he asked me about the $480,000 house he supposedly bought me. Every time I closed my eyes, that sentence echoed louder, like it was trying to punch its way into the truth. By morning, I knew I couldn't pretend it was nothing. Something was wrong, deeply, painfully wrong. The first thing I did was open my laptop. I checked every corner of my email, promotions, spam, trash, old folders, nothing. No mortgage alerts, no title documents, no escrow confirmations. If a house had been purchased in my name, there should have been a digital footprint. But there was absolutely nothing. My heart started to pound as I moved on to my bank accounts. Again, nothing. No odd deposits. No withdrawals. No fees. And definitely no sign of a real estate transaction. I checked my credit score next. Clean. No mortgage inquiries, no new accounts, no debt. According to every financial record attached to my name, that house did not exist. But Grandpa Ron would never lie about something like that, which meant someone else was lying. I walked to my mailbox next, hoping maybe something had slipped past me. I sifted through Christmas cards and bills. Still nothing, no notices, no tax statements, no county envelopes. It made 0 sense. Then a terrible thought hit me like a punch to the stomach. What if something was mailed, and someone else intercepted it? My parents had keys to my apartment. They lived close. And Lacey had looked like she was swallowing a grenade last night. She had been too nervous, too eager to change the subject. My hands trembled as I grabbed my phone and called the county recorder's office. "Hi, this is Nora Whitfield," I said. "Can you check if there are any properties registered under my name?" The woman on the line asked me to hold. I sat there staring at my reflection in the microwave door, my foot tapping so fast it felt like a heartbeat outside my body. Miss Whitfield, she came back. Yes, a property was purchased under your name 6 months ago. A single-family residence on Brookridge Lane. My entire body went cold. So, the house is real, I whispered. Yes. And all associated documentation was mailed to the forwarding address we have on file. Forwarding address? My throat tightened. What forwarding address? She read it out. It wasn't mine. It was my parents' home address. I felt my pulse in my ears. Was there a form submitted to change the address? I asked, barely breathing. Yes, she said. Filed the same week the property closed. I didn't need her to tell me who filed it. I knew. Deep down, I had known since the moment Lacey choked on her wine. Someone in my family redirected every piece of mail connected to that house. Someone stole information meant for me. Someone wanted me not to know. I hung up slowly, staring at nothing. My own family had done something unforgivable, and now I needed to find out just how far they went. I needed answers, but I also needed to be smart. After what I learned from the county recorder's office, I couldn't just storm into my parents' house screaming. They had already proven they were capable of hiding an entire property from me. So I did the one thing that felt safe. I reached out to my cousin Renee and asked if she wanted to grab coffee. She'd always been the least dramatic person in the family, the one who somehow slipped through chaos without being sucked into it. When we sat down at the cafe, she greeted me with her usual warm smile, completely unaware that my life had cracked open 2 nights earlier. We ordered our drinks, chatted a little about work, about the weather, about Christmas plans. But underneath it all, my mind was racing. Should I tell her? Should I ask her what she knew? Before I could even decide, Renee took a sip of her latte and casually said, "By the way, did you ever end up seeing that house your grandpa bought you?" The world around me went silent. My heart slammed against my ribs. "What house?" I asked, trying to sound calm even as my voice wavered. She blinked at me, confused. "The starter home," she said. "He told everyone about it back in June. He was so excited. Kept saying how proud your parents were to help handle everything. Didn't you move in already?" I stared at her, stunned. It felt like the floor tilted beneath me. Grandpa had bragged about it. He told family members. And my parents had pretended to help? Pretended to handle everything? My hands tightened around my cup. "Renee," I whispered. "I never heard about any house. I didn't get anything. My parents never said a word." Her face dropped. "Wait, what?" "But at the 4th of July barbecue, your mom was talking about how everything worked out and how you'd understand soon. And your dad said something like, 'It's in good hands now.' Everyone thought you already knew. In whose hands?" I demanded, my voice sharper than I intended. She froze, then her eyes widened slightly. "Oh God. Nora. Lacey moved somewhere around that time, didn't she?" My blood went cold. I hadn't connected the dates. I hadn't thought about the timing. Lacey had suddenly shown up at family dinners dressed like she'd stepped out of a home decor commercial, talking about new beginnings and privacy. She'd never invited me to her place. Not once. And when I asked her about it, she brushed me off with some vague excuse. Everything clicked at once. My parents had taken the house meant for me and given it to Lacey, my older sister, their golden child, the one who had been coddled and worshipped her entire life while I was left to survive on my own. I sat there shaking, barely hearing Renee's apologies, barely tasting the coffee in front of me. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't an accident. My family had plotted around me, lied to me, stolen from me. And now, for the first time, I understood exactly who I was dealing with. I drove to my parents' house with a knot in my stomach, so tight it felt like it was strangling me from the inside. I didn't bother calling ahead. If I gave them any warning, they would prepare their lies. I needed to see their faces when I asked the questions they never expected me to ask. The moment I walked through the front door, my mother looked startled, like she'd seen a ghost. My dad glanced up from the kitchen table, his expression tense, guarded. Lacey was there too, lounging on the couch with her usual smug ease. Seeing the 3 of them together made my blood pressure spike. "I need to talk to you," I said, my voice shaking but loud enough to echo through the house. My mom forced a smile. "Sweetheart, it's Christmas." "No," I cut her off. "No small talk. I want answers." My dad's eyes narrowed. "About what?" I took a breath that felt like fire in my chest. "About the house Grandpa Ron bought me." Silence. Heavy, suffocating silence. My mother's face went pale. My dad's jaw clenched. Lacey shifted slightly, avoiding my eyes. You knew, I pressed. All of you. You knew he bought it for me. So why didn't I get it? Why wasn't I told? Why was the mailing address changed to yours? My dad stood up slowly. Nora, you're overreacting. No, I'm asking you a question, I snapped. What did you do? My mom wrung her hands, looking everywhere but at me. It's complicated. We were trying to make the right decision. For who? I demanded. Certainly not for me. They exchanged glances, silent, guilty, wordless glances that said everything. Then Lacey laughed softly under her breath. I turned toward her, fury boiling in my veins. You think this is funny? She held up her hands. I'm not laughing. I thought this would come up eventually. My stomach dropped. What do you mean come up? She bit her lip for half a second too long. Look, the house wasn't exactly planned for me. It just kind of fell into my lap. There it was. The truth slipping out like poison. I felt cold all over. So you were living in it. Lacey hesitated, then shrugged, like it was nothing. Mom and Dad said you didn't want it. That you told Grandpa it was too much responsibility. My breath caught. I never said that. Ever. My dad stepped forward. We didn't think you were ready, Nora. You're always overwhelmed, always stressed. So you stole it? I said, my voice breaking. You convinced Grandpa I didn't want his gift. Then you passed it to Lacey like I was some afterthought? My mom whispered. We thought she needed it more. I stared at her in disbelief. This wasn't just betrayal. This was intentional. Planned. Executed behind my back. A coordinated family lie. My parents had taken something my grandfather meant for me, a symbol of love, stability, and trust, and handed it over to the daughter they always held on a pedestal. I felt myself shattering. I wasn't just robbed of a home. I was robbed of a family. I drove home in silence, the weight of what I'd just learned pressing down on me like a physical force. The sky outside was gray, but it didn't compare to the storm raging inside me. Every memory of my parents' smiles, every word of advice they had given me, now twisted into something ugly and hollow. I realized, with a sickening clarity, that the betrayal wasn't just about the house. It was about a lifetime of manipulation and favoritism I had blindly accepted. I parked in front of my apartment and sat there for a long time, hands gripping the steering wheel, staring at the road but seeing nothing. My chest ached, my throat burned, and I felt like I could cry endlessly and never find relief. All those years of striving for their approval suddenly seemed meaningless. All those times I'd bent over backward to please them, only to be discarded when it mattered most. When I finally made it inside, I sank onto the couch and let the tears come. They weren't just tears of anger. They were tears of grief. Grief for the family I thought I had. Grief for the trust I'd given freely, only to see it trampled. I thought I was prepared for hard truths, but this was different. This was calculated. This was personal. I remembered every subtle way they had shown favoritism to Lacey over the years. The praise, the privileges, the quiet reinforcement that she was the responsible one, the golden child. I had always dismissed it, telling myself it didn't matter, that love didn't have to be measured. But it mattered. It had mattered all along. And now, it had culminated in the ultimate betrayal. A $480,000 house stolen right out from under me, with lies and deception as the cover. I tried to call my mom once, just to hear her side, to maybe find a shred of explanation. But my fingers froze over the phone, and when I finally mustered the courage, I realized I couldn't. I didn't want to hear the excuses, the justifications, the "we did it for your own good" rhetoric that would only make my chest tighten further. I didn't want to hear another word from them. I made a decision then, clear and unshakable. I would cut off contact. I would stop letting them dictate my emotions, my worth, my sense of security. I needed to grieve, yes, but I also needed to reclaim my life from the people who had tried to erase me from it. As the hours passed, the tears slowed but the ache remained. I kept replaying every conversation, every smile, every subtle slight, and suddenly the manipulation I had ignored for years stood out in stark relief. I wasn't imagining it. It had always been there, carefully hidden behind warm words and false affection. I closed my eyes and made a silent vow to myself. I wouldn't let this betrayal define me. I would rise from it. I would rebuild my trust, my boundaries, my sense of self. But for now, I let myself mourn. Not the house, not even the money, but the family I thought I had and the innocence I had lost. This was more than heartbreak. This was a reckoning. And I knew deep down, It was only the beginning of my fight to reclaim what was rightfully mine. I had spent weeks stewing in anger and confusion, but finally, I knew I needed an ally. Grandpa Ron had always been my safe place, the one person in the family whose love had never felt conditional. I called him, heart-pounding, and asked if we could meet privately. He agreed without hesitation, his voice warm but tinged with concern. When I arrived at his modest home, he greeted me with his usual grin, though I could see the worry lines etched deeply into his face. "Nora, sweetheart, it's been too long," he said, pulling me into a hug. But I barely returned it. I had too much to say, too much truth to spill. We sat in his living room, the aroma of fresh coffee filling the air. I took a deep breath and began to tell him everything, from the dinner disaster to the phone call with the county recorder, to the way my parents had lied and given Lacey the house that had been meant for me. I spoke fast, words tumbling out like a dam had broken. At first, Grandpa Ron's face shifted from confusion to disbelief. He shook his head slowly, muttering, This can't be real." "They wouldn't." His voice trailed off, and I could see his hands clenching into fists. "They did," I whispered. "Every last bit. Lacey is living in it, and my parents convinced you I didn't want it." His reaction was immediate and visceral. He slammed his hand onto the coffee table, making the mugs jump. "Nora, I thought you didn't want the house. I honestly believed you had said no, or that you'd turned it down. I thought you were ungrateful, or maybe too distant to care." His eyes were wide, almost panicked. I never imagined they'd lie to me like that. I felt a flicker of relief, knowing he had never doubted me, just been misled. "Grandpa, I didn't know anything. I never got a single piece of paperwork." He nodded sharply, his jaw tightening. "Then we'll fix this. I'll make sure they can't steal from you again. Not this time." He got up and disappeared into another room, returning with a thick folder of papers. My hands shook as I took them, flipping through the documents. The deeds, the closing papers, the signed contracts, all clearly showing the house had been intended for me alone. Every signature and stamp was intact, every line proof that I was the rightful owner. "I'll do everything I can to set this right," Grandpa Ron said firmly. "Not to punish them, not out of malice, but justice, Nora. They need to understand what they tried to do." I felt a surge of hope mixed with determination. For the first time in weeks, I wasn't alone in this. Grandpa Ron wasn't just my grandfather anymore. He was my ally, my support, my advocate. Together, we could take on the lies, the favoritism, and the betrayal. As I left his house, clutching the folder of evidence, I felt a spark of something I hadn't felt in a long time: power. Not just over the situation, but over the life my family had tried to control. Grandpa Ron believed in me, and now I believed in myself. The fight wasn't over yet, but I knew I wouldn't face it alone. The first time I met Elias Crane, I felt a mixture of fear and determination twisting in my stomach. He was a tall man with sharp eyes and a calm confidence that immediately made me feel both reassured and nervous. I laid out the story, every detail. The Christmas dinner, the intercepted mail, Lacey moving into the house that had been meant for me, and finally the folder Grandpa Ron had given me. Elias listened carefully, nodding occasionally, taking meticulous notes. When I finished, he leaned back and studied me for a long moment. "Nora," he said finally, "what your family did is not just unfair. It's illegal. Fraud, forgery, misrepresentation. You've got more than enough to pursue this legally." I swallowed hard, my hands trembling. "You mean, I could actually get the house back?" He nodded. "Yes, and you can hold them accountable for the deception. But you need to be prepared. Families don't like being taken to court, especially when it's their own." I felt a rush of anger mixed with relief. "I've waited too long. I can't let them get away with this." Elias smiled slightly. "Good. Determination is your best weapon. Here's what we'll do. We'll file a civil case, citing property fraud, intentional misrepresentation, and any forged documents if they exist. I'll handle all filings and notices. You just need to be ready to testify to what you know and the timeline of events." For the next few days, I gathered every scrap of information I could. Emails, phone records, statements from Renee, even old family text messages that hinted at my parents' deception. Elias organized everything, making copies, labeling evidence, and preparing me for questions I might face. Each piece made the situation feel more real, more inevitable, and also more terrifying. I wasn't just confronting my parents emotionally anymore. I was confronting them legally. Finally, the paperwork was filed. Official complaints went to the county court. charges of property fraud, falsifying information, and intentional misrepresentation. I handed the final copies to Elias and felt a strange mixture of anxiety and satisfaction. The legal system was now on my side, and the burden of proof rested in my hands. Within hours, the ripple hit my family. My parents received their first notices, and I could almost picture them reading the words, disbelief spreading across their faces. Lacey called once, her voice shaky, trying to act casual. "Nora, is this really necessary?" "It's not about necessity," I said calmly. "It's about justice." I hung up before she could respond further. The next few days were a blur of legal forms, phone calls, and meetings with Elias. Each step felt like taking back a piece of myself, reclaiming what had been stolen. And with every notice sent to my parents and Lacey, the tension I had felt for months began to shift from helpless anger to empowered determination. I knew this battle wouldn't be easy. There would be denials, lies, and probably more manipulation. But for the first time in months, I felt control. The legal system, combined with Grandpa Ron's support, had leveled the playing field. I wasn't just fighting for a house anymore. I was fighting for truth, for accountability, and for the life that had been stolen from me. And I wasn't backing down. The moment my parents received the first letters from Elias Crane, chaos erupted. I could almost hear it over the phone as Marlene's voice cracked in desperation. "Nora, please, just drop this," she begged, the words trembling with a mixture of fear and guilt. "We only did it for the family. We thought it was better this way. For everyone." I took a deep breath, my hands gripping the phone tightly. "Better for who, Mom?" "Lacey. Or you and Dad, so you could play favorites and lie to Grandpa." I didn't give her a chance to respond. I couldn't. I wasn't about to be guilt-tripped after months of deception. Her pleas continued, but I had already made my choice. I wasn't backing down. Then Harold's voice cut in, loud and defensive. "It's Ron's fault. If he hadn't pushed the house onto you, none of this would have happened. We were just following his instructions." I felt my blood boil. "Following your instructions, Dad? You lied to him. You lied to me. You gave my house to Lacey." The tension was palpable, even over the phone. And Lacey, she had the audacity to call me next, her voice dripping with venom. "Jealous much, Nora? You're just upset because you never get anything handed to you. Maybe it's time you grow up." Her words stung, but they also confirmed everything I already knew. The manipulation, the favoritism, the entitlement. I let the line go silent before responding. "No, Lacey. I'm angry because you took something that wasn't yours, and you knew it. That's why this is happening." As the days went by, lawyers pressed with evidence and deadlines. Panic spread through my parents' household like wildfire. Every document, every recorded conversation, every copy of the deed I had from Grandpa Ron became a weapon of undeniable truth. I could hear it in the frantic voices when they called each other behind closed doors, blaming one another, scrambling for explanations that wouldn't hold up in court. Finally, Lacey cracked. During a tense family meeting mediated by Elias, she blurted it out, voice shaking and eyes darting everywhere. I knew the house was meant for Nora. I accepted it anyway. I didn't think she'd find out." The room went silent. My parents' faces fell, guilt and fear mixing in equal measure. Grandpa Ron, who had been quietly observing, slammed his hand on the table. His eyes were fierce, unwavering. "You all have one final warning," he said, his voice low and icy. "If you do not cooperate fully with Nora and the legal proceedings, you will be cut out of my will entirely. No exceptions. No second chances." For the first time, I saw the full weight of their actions reflected back at them. The lies, the favoritism, the manipulations, they had underestimated both me and Grandpa Ron. The facade of family unity shattered in front of all of us. I sat there, heart pounding, and realized the truth of it. The house was never just a house. It was the proof of the trust, respect, and honesty my family had refused to give me for years. And now, finally, justice was forcing them to confront it. The fallout had begun, and there was no going back. The day of the mediation arrived with a heaviness I could feel in my chest. I sat in the small, sterile office, Elias Crane by my side, while my parents and Lacey glared at me across the table. Their faces were pale, their bravado gone. The air was thick with tension, like a storm waiting to break, and I felt a strange mixture of anxiety and determination. This was it, the moment where everything I had fought for would either be restored or lost. Elias laid out the evidence with precision. The deed proving the house was mine, the correspondence showing the address had been redirected, and the documents from Grandpa Ron confirming the gift had always been intended for me. I listened quietly as he explained each point, letting the truth speak for itself. I didn't need to argue. The evidence was overwhelming. My parents tried to interject, their voices shaky and defensive. "Nora, we thought," my mother began, but Elias interrupted firmly. "The court will not accept excuses or manipulation. The facts are clear." Lacey shifted in her seat, her usual smugness gone. I could see the guilt etched across her face. She opened her mouth to protest, then closed it, defeated. For the first time, she couldn't twist the truth to her advantage. Hours later, the mediator delivered the decision. My heart raced as the words hit the room. Full ownership of the property was granted to me. My parents and Lacey were ordered to vacate within 30 days, and they were also required to compensate me for damages caused by their deception. A silence fell over the room. My parents' shoulders slumped. Lacey avoided my gaze. I didn't feel triumph in the way I thought I would. Instead, a deep ache settled in my chest. Justice had been served, yes, but at what cost? The family I had once loved, the people I had trusted blindly, were now strangers in my eyes. Later that week, Grandpa Ron arranged a small family gathering. I arrived cautiously, unsure what to expect. When he stepped forward, his eyes glistened with emotion. "Nora," he said, his voice steady but warm, "I owe you a public apology. I believed you had turned down the house, and I never imagined anyone in this family would deceive you like this. I am so proud of you for standing up for yourself." The sincerity in his voice made my throat tighten. For years, I had felt invisible, overlooked, and undervalued. But here was someone who truly saw me, who had believed in me from the start. I hugged him, tears slipping down my cheeks. Finally, the day came to move into the house. Walking through the front door, I ran my hands over the walls, the counters, the empty rooms that would soon become my home. Every corner reminded me of what I had endured, but also of what I had achieved. This house wasn't just bricks and mortar. It was proof that I could fight for myself, claim my worth, and protect my future. I sat on the couch for a long moment, letting it all sink in. Triumph and heartbreak swirled together, a bittersweet mix that lingered in the air. I had reclaimed what was mine, but the cost had been high. The family I had loved was lost to me, and yet, in this space, I could finally breathe. This was my victory, hard-won and rightful, and it felt both empowering and painfully lonely. I had my home. I had justice. And now, I had a future I could build entirely on my own terms. After the mediation and moving into my rightful home, I expected relief to wash over me, but what I felt instead was a quiet, steady determination. The storm of anger, betrayal, and heartbreak had passed, leaving a calm clarity behind. I realized that my revenge wouldn't be flashy or vindictive. It wouldn't involve humiliating my parents or Lacey or creating drama at family gatherings. My revenge would be simple, but far more powerful. I would take control of my life and cut out anyone who had ever used me as a pawn. Grandpa Ron was the first person I reached out to. I invited him over as often as he liked, and he came, smiling and laughing, filling my house with warmth and the kind of unconditional love I hadn't realized I'd missed so desperately. With him, I could be myself, unguarded and confident. But my parents and Lacey? I didn't call. I didn't text. I didn't respond. They had made their choices, and I was making mine. Weeks turned into months. I decorated my home, slowly transforming it from an empty space into a reflection of me, bright, organized, full of life. I planted flowers in the yard, set up a small reading nook by the window, and even adopted a cat named Whiskers, who had a way of curling up on my lap and making everything feel lighter. Every corner of the house reminded me that I had earned this space, this sanctuary, without relying on anyone who had tried to steal it from me. Then came the moment I knew would test my resolve. My parents called, tentative and nervous, trying to reconnect. They hinted at financial trouble, subtly begging me to help. Their voices were laced with false remorse and guilt, but I could hear the old patterns lurking beneath. This was their last attempt to worm back into my life, to regain control, to exploit my kindness. I sat with the phone in my hand, took a deep breath, and said calmly, "I'm sorry, I can't help you." There was silence on the other end, followed by stammered protests. But I didn't waver. I didn't yell. I didn't explain. Their manipulations and favoritism had ended the day I reclaimed the house. I hung up and felt an almost electric sense of freedom. From that day forward, I focused entirely on myself. I invested in my career, my friendships, my passions. I traveled when I wanted, learned new skills, and surrounded myself with people who genuinely cared for me. Each step I took reinforced my boundaries and strengthened the pride I had reclaimed. Revenge, I realized, wasn't about hurting them. It was about protecting me. By refusing them access to my life, I dismantled the cycle of favoritism and deceit that had haunted me for years. I built walls where they had once tried to sneak in and doors that only the people who respected me could walk through. Sitting on my porch one evening, sipping tea as the sun dipped below the horizon, I felt a sense of triumph that was quiet but complete. The house, the home, was mine. My peace was mine. And for the first time in my life, I was living entirely on my own terms, strong, proud, and free from those who had tried to control me. This was my revenge, and it was perfect. Do you think Nora made the right choice by standing up to her family and cutting them out, or should she have tried to forgive and rebuild ties? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. And if stories like this keep you hooked, make sure to hit subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a new video.